Democrats moving full speed ahead with the impeachment, setting a vote tomorrow to impeach President Trump for the second time. Let's bring in Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley. He testified in the impeachment hearings for President Trump and Bill Clinton when Democrats would not call on him because they didn't like what he had to say. So here we go. The House they're going to have no debate, a simple vote on Wednesday. How does this play out?
Well, it's going to come down to a muscle vote. You know, they'll see how many, if they get over the line in terms of majority for impeachment. What is a real shame is that we're not going to have a very deliberative process. There are some very serious issues here. Questions about not just the basis of the impeachment, but also this idea of a snap impeachment, creating a pathway, an easy, quick way to impeach. It's ironic because in the last impeachment, I chastised the Democrats for impeaching on the thinnest record in the shortest period of time of any presidential impeachment. They've now outdone themselves. They're going to go straight to the floor, essentially, and just do an up or down vote. That's the type of impulse by impeachment that we thought the Constitution would deter. But they're creating this pathway that could very well be used in the future. And I think the lack of serious debate or a hearing on that is disappointing.
That's very measured of you. Disappointing and disheartening and destructive to the country. But I digress. Chuck Schumer is exploring a possible workaround using the authority granted in 2004, where two Senate leaders in 2004 reconvened the Senate in times of emergency. He's hoping to do that in order to get the Senate to vote before January 20th.
Yeah, it is possible they can do this. Some of these measures require unanimous consent. Others can do a workaround of this kind. The real question, the immediate question for Congress is whether they should go down this path. And, you know, Senator Manchin showed real leadership in saying that he considered this ill-advised. It is a test of leadership that I'm afraid President-elect Biden has thus far failed. I mean, he can come forward and say it's time to unite this country. We don't want to rush impeachments in this country. We don't want to use this system in the final days of a term without at least discussing the implications of what we're doing.
Jonathan, I agree with you, and good job, Joe Manchin. Parler filed a lawsuit yesterday against Amazon accusing the company of an antitrust violation after they cut its web services, and everybody else followed suit. Do they have a strong case?
Well, they have a case. It's very hard to make out these antitrust cases. They take a long time. They're very expensive. That's going to be a challenge for Parler. You know, there are groups like the Lincoln Project that have run campaigns to harass lawyers so that they don't represent conservatives or the Trump campaign or the Republican Party, and they're likely to face that again. And so these are major companies that are likely to grind them. But the interesting thing for Parler would be to get into discovery. There's enough here that they may be able to get into discovery and learn about how this decision was made. The interesting aspect, Brian, is that this is sort of a blind spot in terms of our laws. You know, we're used to the classic collusion scene of some dark back room of corporate giants. But what we've seen is that you can have effectively a state media by default. You can have people that essentially get the message. You've seen that in the mainstream media. You've seen that in these companies. They might not have to collude in any direct sense to achieve this uniformity of action. And the result is a serious blow to free speech. And while these people constantly say, look, it's not a free speech problem because the First Amendment only addresses the government. No, it's not a First Amendment problem, but it is a free speech problem. Free speech is broader than the First Amendment.
Wow. I hate to think that the law firms are going to be intimidated to not take cases with certain points of views. I didn't think that it was up to them. And the Lincoln Project, if my resume has a Lincoln Project on it, that should be disqualifying. They're a despicable organization. Jonathan Turley, thanks so much.
Thank you.